Today we're looking at the most disturbing internet rabbit holes. This video is by Chilling Scares. I'll make sure to have them linked in the
UFC
description below.
walkout photo. On October 18th, 2025, a UFC Fight Night match between Brendan Allen and Ryanair de Ridder in Vancouver went viral across the internet. But not because of the fight itself. Instead, the moment that caught everyone's attention happened during Brendan's walkout. A small handful of people noticed that as he was making his way to the octagon, a fan flashed his phone to the camera for a split second, showing what looked like a very disturbing image. What a lot of people thought was the picture of a lifeless body lying on the ground. What made this already creepy incident even more disturbing was when the camera moved a bit further and showed the person who was holding the phone. He was wearing a luchador-inspired wrestling mask, likely to hide his identity, all while looking directly at the camera with an unsettling, almost psychotic smile on his face.
It looks like if Rey Mysterio popped a bunch of Xanax and you just caught him at your local Walmart. This guy does not look like a normal person that is mentally all there. And if he did show that stuff, then he's definitely not all there.
Which begs the question, what was this picture? And why did he show it on live TV to an audience of millions? Reverse image searching the picture on the phone doesn't bring up any similar results, and no one has been able to link it to some movie or TV show either. In other words, the person holding the phone likely took the picture themselves. And judging from what it looks like, the most disturbing explanation that comes to mind is that the man in the luchador mask had killed the person in the photo. The person appeared to have heavy bruises, including black eyes and possibly a bloody mouth. Even if they were alive, they appeared to be in serious danger, possibly after being kidnapped by the perpetrator. And while this might sound absurd at first, it's definitely a real possibility to consider. There have been countless killers throughout history who craved attention and deliberately left behind clues to become famous.
Isn't it also like a massive thing that like serial killers and murderers, they'll go back to the crime scene when like news reporters and police are there just to like kind of bask in the glory and like mess with them because they're there, they did the crime, but nobody knows that they did the crime. It's like some weird serial killer shit.
Maybe this particular killer thought showing off their crime on TV was the best way to receive that attention. And with the virality and discussion online, he certainly achieved that goal. On a similar note, this could also be a ransom kidnapping situation where the stunt was meant to publicly prove the victim was still alive to their family, especially since sending the photo directly would risk law enforcement tracing it back to the kidnappers. That said, there are a few notable innocent theories suggesting the opposite that have likely kept law enforcement from conducting any real investigation. Some have suggested that this was nothing more than a prank. As a user on Reddit speculated, "To me, it looks like some college-aged guy laying on a bathroom floor with makeup on. Could be a dude who got so drunk his mates decided to mess with him by drawing on his face or putting makeup on him, then took a picture. One of them decided to shame him even further by flashing it at the UFC when he knew the cameras would be broadcasting." It's also possible that it could be a deliberate attempt to create a creepy hoax, especially since it happened fairly close to Halloween. Cropping out just the phone and brightening up the image also makes it look a bit more like a regular photo.
Okay, wait a minute. Looking at this right now, it kind of just looks like they were at the pool and one of their friends is like laying on the concrete in front of the pool. I'm still going to blur it just to play it safe.
Some argue that now it looks like a man simply sunbathing on an outdoor lounge chair with a pool in the background.
Yeah.
But why would someone be motivated to show something like this if it really was an innocent picture? At the end of the day, all of these theories are just guesses, and any number of things could really be going on here, innocent or disturbing. Because the masked man's identity was never revealed, we will likely never know for sure.
That's weird.
Buried alive in Brazil. In January 2018, a 37-year-old Brazilian woman named Rosângela Almeida was going about her day when she suddenly collapsed out of nowhere. She was rushed to the hospital where doctors found that she had experienced 2 cardiac arrests. She was in critical condition and eventually passed away on January 28 after barely clinging to life for a few days in the ICU. Her family held a memorial service for her that evening, and she was buried in the Sonora Santana Cemetery near her hometown. Her remains were placed in a wooden casket which was encased in a solid concrete tomb. Losing her at such a young age was devastating.
Nothing stupid going on here, just I shook my head at him because he said a wooden casket, and I saw that and it's like obviously tile and mortar, and I was like, I don't think it is. That's the only reason I shook my head.
Devastating for her family, and especially her mother. What none of them knew, however, was that their grief was about to take a dark, tragic turn. You see, a day after her burial, reportedly, people living next to the cemetery started hearing noises from graves. These included the sound of someone banging their hands against a hard surface, as well as a faint scream in some instances. However, the neighbors initially brushed off the noises as a prank by children, something that apparently happened often enough for them to ignore the noises entirely. But several days passed and the sounds did not stop. It wasn't until 11 days later that someone realized that the sounds were coming directly from Rosangela's grave. The neighbors immediately alerted her family upon making this discovery, fearing that she might have been
Being buried alive has to be one of the worst ways to go. I know I've said it before, but that is just one of the most brutal ways to go, because I don't know if you die of, like, giving yourself a heart attack in there because you're so scared, or if it's going to be the suffocation that ends up getting you in the end. What do you guys think would be worse, being buried alive or drowning? I kind of think being buried alive, because at least drowning, you know it's going to be quick enough that, like, it's going to end sooner. Where being buried alive, I feel like you have to bask and, like, sit in it with your thoughts longer. Let me know in the comments what you think.
Falsely declared deceased and was still alive when buried. What made the situation even more concerning was the fact that Rosangela had been suffering from fainting spells ever since she was little. The time she spent unconscious had also been increasing over the years. Maybe she was just passed out when the hospital staff incorrectly declared her dead. Family, friends, and neighbors rushed to the cemetery and opened her coffin, hoping to save her, with some people recording the whole event. Sadly, Rosangela was showing no signs of life. However, the people who touched her body exclaimed that she was still a bit warm to the touch, implying that she was at least alive up until very recently. Later reports also claimed that the nails in the coffin were looser than they were when she was buried, and that there were injuries on her wrists and blood marks on the inside of the coffin that weren't present before. Even the pieces of cotton placed in her nose and ears were knocked out. Most importantly, witnesses reported that she didn't seem nearly decomposed enough for someone who had died 11 days earlier.
Wait a minute. When did they say that this happened? Because they've been doing embalming before burials forever. So, like, if you weren't dead before, you probably would have woken up or accidentally have been murdered by the coroner, you know? Was this before that? Or is this in a place where they don't really do the embalmings? It's optional?
After the casket was exhumed, Rosangela was taken back to a nearby hospital where she was pronounced dead for a second time and buried once again. The question everyone had on their mind, however, was whether she was buried alive the first time. Her family, and particularly her mother, believed that was the case. Testimony from other people also seemed to back this conclusion, with one neighbor stating, "There were more than 500 people who came here and packed the cemetery. Everybody went to see, lots of people touched her foot, and everybody saw that she was still warm. She wasn't cold." Now, there are countless real stories of people tragically getting buried alive by accident, with many eventually passing away in the coffins before they could be rescued. And while the vast majority of these stories are from before we had modern medical tech, errors still do happen to this day. Just a few years ago, a Chinese woman was declared dead and sent to the funeral home before being discovered to be still alive. So, the idea of the same thing happening to Rosangela was a real possibility.
How does that happen in modern day, though? You check their vitals. You can put, like, systems on them to see if there's a heartbeat or, like, oxygen pulsing through their body, no? You could do blood tests. You could do so many different things. Isn't there a better way to, like, confirm if somebody's dead nowadays? But it still happens that people are getting buried alive. That's a nightmare.
Especially when we consider the fainting spells she experienced her whole life. However, despite all the reports and supposed evidence, both the doctors and investigators stayed adamant that she had passed away before her burial. In a statement to the media, the doctor explained that she was already in a serious, irreversible condition when she arrived at the hospital. From there, she was put under an intense level of monitoring to observe all her vitals closely. So, there was no way he could have falsely assumed her to be dead under those conditions. As for the slower decomposition, that was explained by the result of her being on strong antibiotics while she was in the hospital. But these explanations failed to convince Rosangela's mother, who was devastated by the thought of her daughter enduring days of suffering buried in her casket. The case also became major news across Brazil, with many even accusing the police of not doing a proper investigation to protect the hospital and the doctors. So, what really happened? Was Rosangela actually buried alive? From everything I was able to find, it's not likely. For instance, many people reported her body being warm to the touch after opening the casket, suggesting she was alive up until recently. However, even if we assume that she was buried alive, there's no way she would have had enough air in the tomb to stay alive for 11 days straight. Giving it the benefit of the doubt, let's assume there was a hole somewhere in the tomb big enough to let fresh air in. Even then, it's near impossible for her to stay alive without water for long, all while screaming and banging on the coffin. Speaking of which, the investigators also claimed that they didn't find anyone who personally heard the noises, implying that it was nothing more than a rumor. That said, the details surrounding the case, like the reports of wrist injuries and blood marks, are still a bit murky to reach a solid conclusion. Whether or not Rosangela was actually buried alive is still, and will likely remain, unknown.
No, it's known. You can't say it's unknown, bro. She was buried without blood and broken wrist, and then once when you guys went and reburied, like dug her up, she had broken wrist and everything. That's not an if, that's not a maybe, that's a definite, like, she was buried alive. Before we watch this next internet rabbit hole, I have an internet rabbit hole for you guys. If you don't like and subscribe on this video, I'm gonna find you later tonight, and I'm gonna... No. That's just jokes. Let's get into the video.
The Wikipedia edit. WWE wrestler Chris Benoit was scheduled for a live house show on Saturday, June 23, 2007 in Texas. But hours before the event, the 40-year-old wrestler called management and claimed that he wouldn't be able to make it because both his wife and son were ill with food poisoning. But he didn't show up the next day and wasn't picking up his phone either. After over 24 hours of trying to contact him, the WWE management dialed 911 and requested a wellness check for Chris on Monday, June 25, assuming that maybe he was sick as well and needed help. However, nothing could have prepared the officers that were dispatched to his home for the tragedy they were about to witness. They arrived at his house in Georgia at around 2:30 p.m. and rang the bell. When no one answered, they looked for a way inside and discovered the garage door was wide open. The whole house was eerily silent, the reason for which became apparent when they discovered the remains of Chris, his wife, and his son scattered throughout the house. And as it turned out, the person responsible for this tragedy was Chris himself. He ended the lives of both his wife and son before turning on himself. The question now was why? Why would Chris do such a thing? But before the investigators could answer that question, they received a tip that challenged everything they thought they knew about this case. They were contacted by a Wikipedia representative who claimed that someone had made a suspicious edit to the Chris Benoit Wikipedia page at 12:01 a.m. over 14 hours before police did the welfare check. The edit read, Chris Benoit was replaced by Johnny Nitro for the ECW Championship match at Vengeance, as Benoit was not there due to personal issues stemming from the death of his wife, Nancy. The thing about Wikipedia is that it's a social collaboration platform, where anyone can add new info or make edits.
So, the speculation is that the murderer, after killing someone, decided to go onto Wikipedia and update the dude that he just killed's Wikipedia. Solid.
One possible explanation was that Chris, for some reason, made this edit himself. However, the autopsy report revealed that Chris had actually ended everything by Sunday evening, many hours before the edit. So, how did someone learn about what had happened before the news broke out? The possibilities were endless. Maybe he had a second accomplice, or maybe he told someone about what he had done earlier. Tracing his phone revealed that he had sent 5 cryptic messages to 2 of his colleagues, Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Scott Armstrong, including one message that he sent 4 times, reading, My physical address is 130 Green Meadow Lane, Fayetteville, Georgia. And the second one that read, The dogs are in the enclosed pool area. Garage side door is open. These were sent just before 4 a.m. on Sunday, after he had already taken the lives of his wife and son. However, despite their unsettling nature, investigators didn't find any connection between what Chris did and the colleagues he sent these messages to. As for why he did it, the autopsy report also revealed that Chris had CTE, which is a progressive brain disease linked to repeated head impacts. His brain resembled that of an 85-year-old with dementia. Put simply, he likely experienced an extreme mental breakdown which resulted in an irreversible tragedy. However, while this reveal explained most of what happened, the Wikipedia edit was still a mystery. This mystery deepened further when investigators managed to trace the IP address that was used to make the edit and discovered that it was from Stamford, Connecticut, the location of the WWE headquarters. This, combined with the text messages, reignited rumors that WWE management might have been involved in what happened. But before the case could move in that direction, investigators found the man who made the edit, a 19-year-old university student named Matthew Greenberg. Matthew, however, was surprisingly cooperative. He allowed the police to confiscate his computer and other devices to investigate and agreed to an interrogation without any resistance. And when asked about his edit, he claimed that he made it after seeing rumors of it on wrestling forums.
Well, over like last weekend, the wrestler Benoit, there was like rumors going on because he missed the pay-per-view and his scheduled dates, which he never does. And I was reading rumors and speculation online.
Where online?
Like on forums. I forgot the exact sites. But I was like.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, first off, what the hell is that ticking noise? It's going to drive me insane. Secondly, I mean, that could make sense because people do get really dramatic if a celebrity doesn't show up. Oh, possible death, blah, 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 blah. And people do try to speculate just to say, I was correct. But I don't know. I feel like it was too quick. You miss one day and then people are going, oh, you're dead? Making those remarks. I don't think it happens that quick. I feel like it'd take an extended period of an absence for you to think that they would have passed.
Forums?
Yeah.
Okay. In any chat rooms?
No, not chat rooms. I was just reading about it, and some rumors came up, and I just.
Yeah. What were the rumors?
That his family was sick, or someone maybe died, like his wife perhaps, because he missed the pay-per-view.
Okay.
You seem weird, dude.
He was apparently telling the truth, as investigators didn't find a link between him and Chris. Wikipedia admins also found several other false edits he had made over the years, suggesting he was just an internet troll who guessed the truth by pure coincidence. Or at least that's the official story. Some believe that Matthew either had something to do with the incident or at least had insider information, especially since he wasn't the only one who made a similar edit. Something I haven't mentioned yet is that there was a second similar edit just 1 hour after Matthews was removed, stating that Chris missed his show because of the passing of Benoit's wife, Nancy. The IP for this edit was traced to Sydney, Australia, but the person who made it was never identified. For some, this is the confirmation that what everyone knows about Chris isn't the whole story, and there was something else going on below the surface. On the other hand, the existence of this second edit could
Why was there only one guy on the side of the screen? Did you guys see that shit?
be used to prove Matthew's innocence, as they suggest the rumors were genuinely circulating on wrestling forums, since two seemingly unrelated people attempted the same change. That said, it's been more than 18 years since this incident, so even if there was something deeper behind it, at this point it's unlikely to be revealed.
Well, I'm going to end the video right there. I'm going to let you guys go watch this on your own accord and see the last couple internet rabbit holes. But that is it for our video. Leave a comment what you guys want to see in the future. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll make sure to see you guys in the next one. Peace.